We're in Izmir, in Turkey, with Şehnaz, who has Tahir, and then the last name I've never been able to pronounce.
It does not matter. My last name is Tahir, so Gürçağlar is my married name, so it's
that's
not
why
essential.
you get two.
That's right.
Okay, so the whole thing is,
Şehnaz Tahir Gürçağlar.
that's what I was going to say. Exactly.
Right.
Şehnaz, what do you do? What's your job these days?
Yeah, I am an academic. I teach courses at Glendon College at York University in Toronto. I have retired from my position as a full professor of translation studies at Boğaziçi University, but I continue teaching courses there as well, so part-time.
So you're moving between Canada and Turkey?
You can say that, and of course online teaching helps. Some of my courses are online, some are hybrid, so I think I have a nice combination.
Okay, great. Do you have a specialized area in translation studies?
Yeah, I teach general translation studies, translation theory courses. What I like teaching, if you would ask me, is translation history. And also I have started teaching about periodicals and translation. I also teach...
Wait.
Yeah.
How can you teach translation history? I've never been able to teach translation history.
You can. Why not?
Nobody asked me.
Really,
Okay.
we'll ask you. That'll be great.
Okay,
A great
that's
retirement
great.
project.
I mean, yeah. So, what were you doing in your mid-20s then?
In my mid-20s, I had just finished a second degree and an MA in media studies in University of Oslo in Norway.
What?
Yeah, that's
Where
my
did you
other
do
life.
your... Where did you go? Where did you start university then?
I started my BA at Boğaziçi University and I graduated as conference interpreter. That's the Department of Translation Studies and Interpreting, Translation and Interpreting Studies. And after graduating, I worked as a journalist for about a year and a half. I started out as a translator and then I shifted more towards reporting, editing. And then the idea for me was to do a master's in communication media studies. And I did that. I went to Oslo. I did a second BA in media studies and an MA.
Wait. Why Oslo?
Because they were offering scholarships, and I also like the idea of Scandinavia, Northern Europe. To me, it seemed like egalitarian, a different atmosphere altogether for young people. And so,
and
yeah.
Cold like Canada.
Cold like Canada,
There
that
you go.
wasn't...
All right. You're training for Canada.
I'm not sure.
So look, that's really interesting that you're trained in interpreting. Most of your research, though, is more general
That's
translation.
right. That's right. Yeah, I did
And then
not
you've been out into another profession and come back, or what happened then to bring you back to the fold?
Yeah, we always talk about the importance of the social context, but then we say the systems theory is out. We're also looking at agency. And my PhD, the start of the PhD for me is pretty much a nice serendipitous coincidence.
Okay, so let's see. So from Oslo,
I came back to Istanbul
all right.
with the idea that I would start a PhD in film studies or media studies. And then I met one of my professors, Suat, dear old Suat Karantay.
Yes.
And we just met on the street and he said, hey, what are you doing these days? And you should never leave translation studies. That's such a nice field. And I agreed. And he said, you know, we just opened up a PhD program. Would you like to apply? So I said, why not? And I did. And the rest is history.
History, no, you had to do a PhD then.
I did, yeah, but I did a PhD in translation studies.
On translating, not interpreting?
No.
Okay.
Interpreting research is fascinating, but it was not something that immediately attracted my interest at the time.
Okay.
So I never did. Apart from one small project we did with Ebru Diriker on community interpreting in Turkey. I have not really worked on interpreting as a field of research, but I did teach interpreting for many, many years, and I love doing that. So I'm an interpreter trainer, but I'm not an interpreting researcher.
So a lot of your research you've done at Boğaziçi then?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And I know you more because the work you've done in translation history, and particularly on the, let's say, the non-major cultures.
Right.
Yeah, just tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So my main research, which was also a part of my PhD dissertation, was to work on the early Republican context in Turkey. So I worked on the period between 1923 and 1960, and I looked at translation as a political instrument in some ways. I looked at the state-sponsored translation movement, but while I did that, I also looked at the field of popular literature and how private companies, publishers, were creating their own canons, their own publishing policies. So I did what you can call a comparative study between the public and the private publishing sectors for that time.
So just for people who are not aware of Turkish history, this is a period of nation building?
That's correct, yes. Yeah. It's the period of nation building. It's the very early nation building period, starting from 1923 until 1940, and then after 1945 to onward, some of the cultural policies were taken back, so to say. There were certain steps taken in different directions. So it's an interesting period to study.
So translation was an instrument of the state?
Initially, yes, it was a tool of state building. I have written about this later too. In Turkey, translation is always political and ideological. So the government has continued using translation as a tool.
This is the case now, these days?
It is. Now it's especially since, I would say, the early 2000s, it's being used as a tool to promote Turkey abroad. So the promotion of Turkish literature.
So that's a
abroad.
Different kind of instrumentalization.
That's right. It's interesting. So it's I've always said translation has served as a mirror. So initially it was the government's effort to try to create a self-image for Turkey through the mirror of translation by translating classics.
A mirror of what should be, not
what should be. Exactly.
I'm interested now. I don't know, because you see Turkey from the outside, moving backwards and forwards. There's a process. Well, secularism is waning. Is that right?
I think that period is over.
Okay. But is translation still used on the other side now?
Yes.
Really?
So
okay.
We have we recently have a wonderful scholar, Sema Üstünkülünk, who actually worked on the translations of Quran in Turkey and also Islamic or Islamist periodicals starting from the 1960s, and how they created an alternative canon for Turkish culture.
Okay.
So there is actually a lot of work that still remains, and a lot of things that we did not really look at, because we were mostly concentrating on the government side of things, government cultural policies.
Well, were we?
We, that is translation scholars in
further,
Turkey.
As translation studies being too Western to see another kind of translation that was out there.
I would object to that. It's more about the mindset of the people who studied and worked in translation studies departments.
Well, that's translation studies, isn't it?
That's translation studies. You mean translation studies has always been a Western phenomenon in Turkey? Is that?
I don't know. In Turkey, I've no idea. But I reckon, in general, yes.
Academically,
it's
yes.
moved from the West.
Yes.
And has to.
Yes. Academically, it has been a Western discipline. It grew out of Western texts. We still teach a lot of Western texts, but I believe that the material and the corpus that we study has also been a little partial.
Sure.
But it's not because of the Western methodologies or the frameworks that we are teaching. It's also partly about our blindness to texts that fall outside of our fields of interest or the paradigm.
Or our languages that we use.
Not necessarily only that, no. But yes, of course, also. Because a lot of Islamist publications were translating from Arabic, from Persian. Not strictly always, but yes. And those pretty much remained outside of our expertise, yeah.
Right. So the key question, what kind of research do we need in translation studies, do you think?
Oh my. I think we need research on a whole range of fields. Technology is, of course, obvious. We have to work more on human-technology interaction. We have to, I think, devise ways of teaching that more properly. I think we need to reinvent what translator training is, and I think some institutions are probably doing that or have started doing that, and those who haven't will probably phased out. And so that definitely is something that needs to be done. Looking back, I think there is still work to be done in translation history. Looking at a lot of cultural processes as translation or through a translation lens. That's a trend that's there, but I think there is more to do there. Like, I have been working on the periodicals, and I think in Turkey, starting from the 19th century, there is a lot of material that looking at the periodical press.
So little has been done on periodicals.
I agree. Especially in cultures that whose literatures, whose intellectual frameworks largely developed through the periodical press, like Turkey.
Şehnaz, thank you very much.
Thank you.